I love to hear about people's success stories of how they've manifested different things, and I also love to read about those stories. And one of Neville Goddard's books called The Law and the Promise has a whole bunch of success stories. Now, he teaches or taught, he's passed away now, but he taught through lectures how to create things and manifest things simply by imagining it in your mind, but specifically imagining it as you are already in the end scene. You're already being and acting as if you've already reached that desire. So you are already living in the completed, desire that you want to manifest from the first person point of view. And one of these stories is about a doctor and his wife who wanted to build an apartment building on the lot next door, but they had no money. And they started imagining having this apartment building built with no money put in by themselves. And I really like this story because actually my husband and I always are, into like real estate and stuff like that. And what really gets me with this one is they were able to completely build this project with no money. Here's the story. For many years, a doctor and his wife dreamed about their stately habitation, but not until they imaginatively lived in it did they manifest it. Here's their story. Some 15 years ago, Mrs. M and I purchased a lot on which we built a 2-story building housing our office and living area. We left ample space on the lot for an apartment building if and when our finances would permit. All those years we were busy paying off our mortgage, and at the end of that time we had no money for an additional building we still desired so much. It was true that we had ample savings account, which meant security for our business, but to use any part of that for a new building would be to jeopardize that security. But now your teaching awakened a new concept, boldly telling us that we could have what we most desired through the controlled use of our imagination, and that realizing a desire was made more convincing without money. So we decided to put it to a test and forget about money and concentrate our attention on the thing we desired most in this world, the new apartment building. With this principle in mind, we mentally constructed the new building as we wanted it, actually drawing physical plans so we could better formulate our mental picture of the completed structure. Never forgetting to think from the end, in our case, the completed occupied building. We took many imaginative trips through our apartment house, renting the units to imaginary tenants, examining in every detail every room, and enjoying the feeling of pride as friends offered congratulations on the unique planning. We brought into our imaginal scene one friend in particular, and I shall call her Mrs. X, a lady we had not seen for some time, as she had given up on us socially, believing us a bit peculiar in our new way of thinking. In our imaginal scene, we took her through the building and asked her how she liked it. Hearing her voice distinctly, we'd had her reply, "Doctor, I think it's beautiful." One day, while talking together of our building, my wife mentioned a contractor who had constructed several apartment houses in our neighborhood. We knew of him only by the name that appeared on the signs adjacent to the buildings under construction. But realizing that if we were living in the end, we would not be looking for a contractor, we promptly forgot this angle. Continuing these periods of daily imagining for several weeks, we both felt that we were now fused with our desire and had successfully been living in the end. One day, a stranger entered our office and identified himself as the contractor whose name my wife had mentioned weeks before. In an apologetic manner, he said, "I don't know why I stopped here. I normally don't go see people, but rather people come see me." He explained that he passed our office often and wondered why there wasn't an apartment building on the corner lot. We assured him that we would like very much to have a building there, but we had no money to put into the project, not even the few $100s it would take for building plans. Our negative response did not faze him, and seemingly compelled, he began to figure and devise ways and means to carry out the job. unasked and unencouraged by us. Forgetting the incident, we were quite startled when a few days later this man called, informing us that the plans were completed and the proposed building would cost us $30,000. We thanked him politely and did absolutely nothing. We knew we had been living imaginatively in the end of a completed building, and that imagination would assemble the building perfectly without any outside assistance from us. So we were not surprised when the contractor called again the next day to say he had found a set of blueprints in his files that fit our needs perfectly with a few alterations. This, we were informed, would save us the architect's fee for new plans. We thanked him again and still did nothing. Logical thinkers would insist that such a negative response from prospective customers would completely end the matter. Instead, 2 days later, the contractor again called with news that he had located a finance company willing to cover the necessary loan with the exception of a few $1,000s. It sounds incredible, but we still did nothing. For remember, to us, this building was completed and rented, and in our imagination, we had not put one penny into its construction. The balance of this tale reads like a sequel to Alice in Wonderland, for the contractor came into our office the next day and said, as though presenting us with a gift, "You people are going to have that new building anyway. I've decided to finance the balance of the loan myself. If this is agreeable, I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers and you can pay me back out of the net profits from rentals." This time we did do something. We signed the papers and construction began immediately. Most of the apartment units were rented before final completion and all but one occupied the day of completion. We were so thrilled by the seemingly miraculous events of the past few months that for a while we didn't understand the seemingly flaw in our imaginal picture. But knowing what we had already accomplished through the power of imagining, we immediately conceived another imaginal scene, and in it, this time, instead of showing the party through the unit and hearing the words, "We'll take it," we ourselves, in imagination, visited tenants who had already moved into that apartment. We allowed them to show us through the rooms and hear their pleased and satisfied comments. 3 days later, that apartment was rented. Our original imaginary drama had objectified itself in every detail except one, and that one became a reality when, 1 month later, our friend, Mrs. X, surprised us with a long overdue visit, expressing her desire to see our new building. We gladly took her through, and at the end of the tour heard her speak the line we had heard in our imagination so many weeks before. As with emphasis on each word, she said, "Doctor, I think it is beautiful." Our dream of 15 years was realized, and we know now that it could have been realized any time within those 15 years if we had known the secret of imagining and how to live in the end of desire. But now it was realized our one big desire was objectified, and we did not put one penny of our own money into it. Sincerely, Dr. M. I just think that story is so cool because they wanted to build this building and they didn't have the money for it. So they just started in their imagination, seeing themselves, seeing the building as completed and that it was occupied. The tenants had already moved into it and they didn't spend any money to do so. And they just kept imagining that over and over again. And then people just showed up in their life to make that a reality, to make that happen. The contractor just walked into their office. They initially had said his name earlier in the process, and then they said, "No, we don't need to call the contractor because in our scene the building is already built. So we don't need to go call a contractor because that means the building's not built yet." So they just let everything happen and just continued with the faith that the building was already built and they didn't put any money into it, and then everything else worked itself out. Hey, leave me a comment below and let me know, what are you working on right now in your imagination? What are you trying to build in your imagination and thinking from the end? Leave me a comment.